Hello, everyone, and welcome to Court-to-Court with the Esquire Coach, where I love to talk about all things sports, entertainment, and the law. Today, we have a very special episode as we are starting our Court-to-Court guest series, our Court-to-Court special guest series. And here with us today, we have the very special guest, Julie Sommer. Julie Sommer is an attorney in Seattle, Washington, and the executive director of the Drake Group's Education Fund. Julie is also a former college athlete. She was a swimmer at the University of Texas, where she was a member of a NCAA national championship swim team. And today she is here to talk with us about her experiences as an attorney and as the executive director of the Drake Group's Education Fund. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Julie Sommer.
Thank you, Cassandra. Happy to be here. It's a delight to be here with a board member of the Drake Group and someone who I met doing this in this NIL space and college sport reform effort.
Yes, yes. If you could please start talking about your experiences as an attorney and as the executive director of the Drake Group's Education Fund.
Yes, so I'm an attorney, practicing attorney in Seattle, Washington, and I have practiced for over a decade in the areas of trust and estates, fiduciary representation, contracts. Now that also includes name, image, likeness, NIL, as well as other areas. And for the past year, I've also transitioned my board work on the Drake Group to becoming the executive director, the first executive director of the C3, our nonprofit, the Drake Group Education Fund. And so I got back in sports law via my work with the Drake Group, and now that's really a big focus of a lot of what I'm doing.
Great, great. Well, as you stated, like we met as college athletes, name, image, and likeness became a thing. And, we've both been working in this space. So, the hot topic now in any college sports conversation is name, image, and likeness. And I know you've done quite a bit of work in this space. So could you talk to us a little bit about the work that you have done in the NIL space?
Sure. I sort of got back into sports law. I was a swimmer, as you said, at the University of Texas in college. I had worked at the Women's Sports Foundation in their advocacy department right after college. It was also when there was basically IMG, just IMG. The headquarters was in Cleveland. I went to law school in Columbus, Ohio. So during law school, I worked in both the IMG legal department during the summers and also during the school year at the Ohio State Athletic Compliance Department as well, the Ohio State Athletic Department. So I moved to Seattle, started practicing in completely unrelated areas, and had reconnected with our former athletic director at the University of Texas, Donna Lopiano, who is a pioneer in gender equity in athletics. And that was basically prompted the day that California Governor Gavin Newsom signed the first NIL bill, which was in September of 2019, which, as you know well, Cassandra, was the watershed event for NIL and athletes' rights. I know you'll get a crack up out of this, but it wasn't the Alston case, right? Sort of
Exactly.
a running joke in the NIL world of those who know, right? I was reading an article yesterday in a major daily, and a sports writer noted that following the Alston case as the event that started NIL. So it's like, no, it's actually the states that started it. It started with Gavin Newsom actually signing the bill authored by California Representative Nancy Skinner, who I've sort of dubbed now the mother of NIL, right? She started it and he signed the bill. And of course, that was after other court cases over the years, which I had followed. And it obviously that is what pushed and prompted the passage of NIL. And while the Alston case was tangentially related, it was just really a confluence of events that summer. And when that decision came out in 2021, it had to do, as you know, with educationally tethered benefits and antitrust restrictions on the NCAA's power to enforce their rules. So it's not what started it, but it certainly affected how the NCAA would respond to it. So it's funny. Another thing we hear is that NIL started all of this change in college athletics and the change in the landscape. But well, that NIL has been one factor in it.
Yeah.
than the changing college sports landscape. It's, look to the coaching carousel, coaching salaries, conference realignments, those things,
Revenue,
right?
broadcasting revenue.
There you go. Exactly. And we know those things not only would have still happened if there were no NIL rights for athletes, because they had been happening for decades, right?
Absolutely.
So when I got back in touch with Donna after Governor Newsom signed that bill, I joined the board soon after that of the Drake Group, the board that you currently serve on, and worked tracking closely all of the state NIL legislation and the federal efforts that started a couple years later. And then when the C3, the Drake Group Education Fund, was started, I became the executive director of that. And also, as you know, there was the Uniform Law Commission effort, and I participated in that as well because so many states were passing and we had this patchwork system, which we're still working within, and all the varying NIL laws. It became clear that there was a need for a national uniform policy. I think it's still needed, whether it's Congress or not. I think we're long term. I don't think we should be working in this patchwork place.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. You said, a lot there. I definitely think that some type of uniformity is needed. I appreciate your comments clarifying for everybody that the Alston case really had nothing to do with NIL, right? But it's just the way the opinion came out just ahead of NIL going into effect that leads people to believe so. Yeah, you have, quite the extensive background in NIL. Thank you for all your efforts on college athletes' rights. So, now with the Drake Group, um, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit more about what the Drake Group is. And then after that, we'll talk about the symposium that the Drake Group is having on April 18th at Howard University.
Absolutely. So the Drake Group Education Fund, we're a nonprofit organization working on critical issues in college athletics that affect all college athletes and college athletic programs. And as you know, we both started out in the NIL and working in that space, but which is still evolving. We have other big things happening in college athletics, right? We have the ongoing court cases, the National Labor Relations Board matters dealing with employment, direct compensation, retro NIL, broadcast revenue sharing. All of those cases are currently pending. And with those issues still evolving, we still have ongoing conference realignments, transfer portal, and coaching carousel moving along. And all of those issues, affect the day-to-day life of college athletes. So those are the issues that we work on day in and day out at the Drake Group Education Fund. And we hold our DC symposium, as well as our monthly webinar series. And on critical issues in college athletics, we produce position statements and studies on issues and draw attention to things happening that not a lot of media covering institutions do. And I think of the Drake Group Education Fund as really a national clearinghouse and advocacy voice in college sports reform. I think we're a true independent voice in college athletic reform, and we hold those forums to have those conversations that aren't always happening in other places, and having the truly honest conversations about how it affects college athletes, how these changes affect college athletic programs. So our Drake Group, the original C4, is still in existence, and that focuses more on policy development efforts. And our C3, the Drake Group Education Fund, hosts the National Symposium. We had our first two at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in 2022 and 2023. And those were a great success. We had moderators such as Bob Costas, Christine Brennan, covered some really important issues. And I'm excited that we have our 2024 Allen Sack National Symposium. And that's going to be held April 18th at Howard University this year. So I'm excited that we find really, I think, a perfect partner in Howard University. As you know, they're a beacon of HBCU excellence. And I think, it's important that during all of this conference realignment and how it affects different institutions, our alignment with an HBCU like Howard reflects our dedication to really amplifying their voices in the fight for equitable reform. So we're really excited to have them host this pivotal discussion on April 18th, and we have a great program shaping up.
Great. Well, I'm excited that the symposium is at Howard University, especially being that I am an alum of Howard University School of Law. So I'm definitely excited to be there on the 18th. So this year's symposium is entitled "The College Athlete More Than a Marketplace." So now I'd like to ask you, like who's going to be speaking at this year's symposium, and also I see the first panel is entitled Beyond the Game: College Athlete Health and Well-Being. If you could also tell us, what type of things the guests will get out of that panel.
Absolutely. As you referenced, being an Howard grad, we're excited that we also, in hosting it on their campus, we're prioritizing sport management students, sports law students or law students, as well as college athletes from HBCUs and other lower resource institutions that, we're recognizing their potential to become transformative leaders like you, Cassandra, in college athletics. So yes, you referenced the title of it. This year is The College Athlete More Than a Marketplace. We think that's really apt considering everything that's happening in the NIL space and conference realignment and the moves related to broadcast revenue. So our first panel, we have nationally recognized moderators. David Steele, it will be moderating the one you just referenced in college athlete health and well-being. He's written for the Sporting News, the Baltimore Sun, San Francisco Chronicle, and Newsday. Our second one will focus on sports wagering, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. That'll be moderated by Doug Letterman, who is the editor and co-founder of Inside Higher Ed, Higher Education. And Jane McManus will moderate our third panel. Jane is an author and editor of the year's best sports writing. And while our panelists are almost completely finalized, just to give you a glimpse of some of the panelists, Michelle Roberts, the former NBA Players Association executive director, who's a practicing expert on player unions, important given current discussions, and Jeffrey Kessler of Winston Strawn, who is the lawyer litigating at least two multi-billion-dollar antitrust cases that could obviously financially capsize college sport. And Arthur Bryant of Bailey Glasser, who is among the top Title IX litigators in the country. They'll actually be on the same panel, the third one, which we'll get to. You referenced the first one, college athlete health and well-being. That one is going to focus specifically on physical and mental health and well-being of college athletes, and specifically honing in on the issues of both housing, something you don't think about a lot with college athletes, the issues of housing and food insecurity. Some little known facts, and these are based on national studies as well as the NCAA's own studies, that 60% of all college athletes report being food insecure. 31%, not a lot of people know that 31% of the top Division I football teams in the FBS and 42% of all other Division I football teams, such as the FCS, are not on scholarship. So not a lot of people think about, the significant portion of athletes that are not on scholarship, right? They may not have access to a training table and may have no place to go during breaks, right? When others are allowed to go and train with their teams or go home, they might not have a place to go during the summer or during holiday breaks. Also, according to an NCAA study, 24% of male and 36% of female athletes have felt so depressed that it was difficult to function. So addressing those issues of anxiety, depression, and all of the surrounding new pressures that college athletes are facing, NIL, longer travel times with conference realignments. That's a really big issue right now. Along with maintaining all of their academic demands, right? It's not like those have gone away. So it's a lot, and that's we're excited to have a panel moderated by David Steele that really addresses these really important issues.
Yeah, I'm glad that, these issues are going to be addressed. I think, a lot of time for college sports fans, you can get caught up in the big headlines of, X player or Y player gets, $1 million NIL endorsement deal or things like that. And it's hard. It's easy just to focus on the big money or the big money that people think that the athletes may be getting. And they're, not thinking about the fact or maybe not aware of the fact that not all athletes, have access to that or have the stability and financial stability that some other athletes may have, which is one of the great things about in NIL is that I believe for some athletes it can help address the extra compensation can help address some of these food insecure issues and other issues that are going to be, like you said, will be addressed during the panel. So yeah, I think that is great to bring light to those issues and to, have a forum where we could talk about how to remedy some of those issues.
Mhm.
The second, go ahead.
And what you just mentioned, as you know, Cassandra, keeping in mind how a lot of institutions run their athletic budgets, 12%, 39% are spent on coach and staff salaries, 12% on athletic scholarships, and only 1% on medical expenses. So,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, a few might get those big NIL deals that are reported and are very headline grabbing, but there are thousands of college athletes that aren't profiting off of NIL.
Yep. Yep. And that still need assistance and still need, avenues to have all of their needs met. So the second panel is entitled "The House Always Wins: The Impact of Sports Betting on College Athlete Well-Being." I know you spoke a little bit about, that sports betting would be discussed, and I know that the NCAA recently made an announcement that they were gonna try to, I guess, stop or control sports betting in college sports. So we could talk a little bit about that panel and the NCAA's recent announcement.
Sure. Yeah, this is another, as if we didn't have enough issues, right, Cassandra, blowing
Yep.
up in college athletics. Now we have sports wagering, so gambling in college athletics. And this really started in 2018 when the United States Supreme Court ruled in Murphy versus NCAA that the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992, the PAPSA, also known as, was unconstitutional. So that opened the floodgates, really, to states passing laws allowing sports wagering, including college. And the NCAA, I don't think was ready for that, right? We didn't have the education in place. It was sort of another game of catch up there, and the protective mechanisms in place for college athletes, and we're seeing some of the fallout of that. So with what's grown exponentially now, this explosion of sports gambling in college athletics has a real impact on college athletes. And we've seen that in many headlines, college athletes getting in trouble for participating in gambling. Just some of the sort of eye-opening facts regarding sports wagering, 30% of all male college athletes and 67% of all college students report gambling. We know that gambling's a highly addictive activity. We know that it's particularly highly addictive to this age group. And, we've seen match fixes in the past, right, before the Murphy case. A great documentary to watch on this topic is Hoop Schemes, which was the scandal in the 1990s at Arizona State with their men's basketball team. And it was all about a match fixing scheme, which was really unfortunate. And the players that also got caught up in that. If you watched, I'm sure you see it, Cassandra, when you watch the games now, right? It's in all of our faces,
Oh, yeah.
right? We're not in a sports book. We're in our homes, right? So if you watched in particular one that jumped out at me was the Iowa women's basketball game in February where Caitlin Clark broke the scoring record. I don't know if you caught that, but Gambling was really on full display in that moment. And I don't know if you watched that, but Gus Johnson, who was commentating, he actually hyped this real-time wagering opportunity as she was approaching the record.
Wow.
And yeah, he said, yeah, as she's approaching the record, right? And this is the national TV broadcast. He said, not only can fans wager on the point spread, but they can wager on Clark's prop bets. And
Wow.
he just said, action on Caitlin. And it just felt strange, right? I'm just, it feels strange to hear that in your living room watching a college game, and you're not standing in a sports book at a casino. You're just watching the
Yeah.
game. Right. And then you've got the other ads, bombarding the DraftKings, um, everything else throughout the games. And then you have, of course, the proliferation of mobile sports betting. So a lot of students on campus, it's easy for them, whether they do it in their state, whether they have proxy people in other states. There's a real ease of gambling, right? And the advertising, especially with younger people, there's this, you can't help but see it. There's a promise of easy wealth there. And it's obviously highly targeted to younger people. So we have 38 states and Puerto Rico who have legalized it. So I think, this is one of those areas where it's time to also address a uniform policy, and a policy that educates and protects athletes. And you mentioned the NCAA, and that's true. President Baker just announced the intent to ban prop bets, which is what Gus Johnson was hyping during Caitlin's play there. So I think that would be a good thing for college athletics. There's actually a couple relevant bills that have just been introduced. Representative Tonko's Safe Bet Act, which addresses advertising during college athletics games, and the GRIT Act, which actually directs an existing excise tax. It's not a new tax, it's an existing excise tax directed towards education. So, there are efforts now which are good to help, catch up with the proliferation of gambling. And I think that's definitely needed. So this will be a great panel to address that. We have some great people lined up for that. And obviously a very prescient issue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That panel will be, I think, very, very interesting as we continue to watch that issue evolve. And on the last panel is entitled For Love and Money, Balance and Equity, Opportunity, and Compensation in College Sports. So if you could please just, say a little bit more about what attendees will get out of that panel.
Absolutely. This is a panel. We've held a similar panel at the previous two symposium. It's sort of the existential question of what's happening in college athletics. What's the future of the NCAA governance, college athlete compensation, including NIL, including the real prospect of revenue sharing, possibly employees, those court cases, and the future of college athletics as a whole. So excited about this panel. This is the panel where we have Jane McManus will be moderating this one, and Michelle Roberts, Jeffrey Kessler, Arthur Bryant, and others, Brittany Whiteside, who has great experience in as an athletic director as well. And so people who are, have been on the ground dealing with these issues and seeing, how it's rolled out, right? And how it's affected, I think important to have not just Jeffrey Kessler's voice. It's obviously been critical, voice and agent of change, and not just college athletics and professional sports as well, for athletes' rights, but how does it really affect all of college athletics? Arthur Bryant will be on that panel talking about Title IX and how to reconcile that. So that will be, I think, a really good panel for people to tune into as well. And again, we talked about some of the numbers a moment ago, but not a lot of people know that it's the top five football conferences, including, call it now the Big Two, right? The SEC and the Big Ten. Schools where, again, 39% of their budgets are on coaching and staff salaries, only 12% are on athlete scholarships, and 1% is on medical. So those are issues we need to take a hard look at. And again, this is, a place where we're holding the conversation, to have those real conversations at the Drake Group Education Fund. So I'm excited about that.
That sounds great. That sounds great. All of these topics are very timely and very important as we continue to watch the college athletics landscape evolve. Especially given late last year and earlier this year, the NCAA has really kind of taken some punches on their ability to enforce their rules. We talked a little bit about some of the cases that the NCAA is continuing to face, but two major things that happened was that the NCAA was stopped or enjoined from enforcing their transfer rules, and recently was enjoined from enforcing their rules regarding using NIL as a recruiting inducement. So, my question to you is like, how can current college athletes and future college athletes and their parents, with all of these things going on, navigate these NIL opportunities, and how could attending the Drake Group Symposium help them with that?
Absolutely. I think people will learn a lot from listening to these three panels. It's a one day symposium. And these panelists and moderators will be discussing things that aren't written in the book yet. So I think for the students that are studying it, that want to be leaders in college athletics, it's a really important thing to tune into. And for even, not just college, but high school athletes, and they want to learn about the landscape and what's happening and how it might affect some of their decisions. And, speak up and have their voice heard as well, right? So this, and also I wanted to mention, we'll also have the student journalism prizes that we'll be awarding, as well as the Drake Group Education Fund Hero Award. So the Journalism Award will be for investigative reporting on intercollegiate athletics. And those students, shared basically how they broke their stories for student newspapers, and really how that type of investigative journalism has been really critical to breaking, important stories of college, college athletes and college athletic programs that aren't related to game scores, and holding powerful institutions accountable, when a lot of professional sports journalists might be hesitant to report on them because they want to maintain that access to teams and coaches. So we have some brave young journalists who are sort of holding that fourth estate, right, on college campuses, and we'll be recognizing that as well. So I'm excited for our awardees, including Sally Roberts, who's done amazing work in advancing the sport of wrestling, girls and women's wrestling, and that's now one of the most emerging sports in the country for women. And they just held the first national championship for that at the collegiate level. So we're hoping that to become a officially sanctioned sport, and Sally's done an incredible job in that area. So you'll be able to join us online. We'd love to have people come in person, and you can buy a ticket on our website at thedrakegroupeducationfund.org. So we'd love to see people come in person. If you can't, it'll be also broadcast on YouTube via our website. And then if people can't attend, we'd love for them to consider sponsoring a student to attend. And this is, the local students I was referring to in the DC area, majoring in sports law, sports management, acknowledging that they may not be able to attend conferences like this because of expense. So this allows them to attend at no charge. So again, you can make that donation on our website at thedrakegroupeducationfund.org.